The sun beat down on the dusty plains, baking the earth to a crisp. A lone figure, weathered and worn, trudged across the landscape. This was Dusty, a cowboy whose luck had run drier than the desert itself. He wasn't always like this. Once, he owned a sprawling ranch, cattle dotted across the horizon as far as the eye could see. But a string of bad luck, drought, rustlers, and a bank that wasn't so friendly after all had taken it all away. Now, he wandered, his saddlebags holding only the barest of necessities, his heart heavy with the loss of everything he'd worked for. His face was a roadmap of hard times, etched with deep lines around his eyes and mouth. His clothes, once fine denim and sturdy leather, were now faded and patched, telling a silent story of decline. Even his faithful horse, a palomino named Goldie, seemed to carry the weight of their shared misfortune. Dusty wasn't sure where he was going, just away. Away from the memories, away from the shame of failure. He just kept riding day after day, letting Goldie choose the path, hoping for. Well, he didn't know what he was hoping for. Maybe just a place to rest his weary bones, a moment of peace in a world that seemed determined to kick him while he was down. He was a shadow of his former self, a broken-down cowboy lost in the vastness of the West. The spirit that once burned bright within him had been reduced to a flickering ember, barely clinging to life. He felt as desolate as the landscape surrounding him, a forgotten soul adrift in a sea of hardship. All that mattered was finding water and some cover before the sun dipped below the horizon. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, dark clouds gathered on the horizon. A rumble of thunder echoed across the plains, promising a storm. Dusty urged Goldie onward, his eyes scanning the landscape for any sign of shelter. The wind picked up, whipping his worn clothes around him and carrying the scent of rain. Just when his hope began to dwindle, he spotted it. The dilapidated barn, its wooden walls weathered and gray, its roof sagging in places. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. With a sigh of relief, Dusty guided Goldie towards the barn, the first fat raindrops beginning to fall. He dismounted, his joints protesting with a chorus of pops and creaks. He led Goldie inside, the barn's large doors groaning in protest as he slid them open. The interior was dark and dusty, the air thick with the smell of hay and damp earth. Sunlight streamed through cracks in the walls, illuminating swirling dust motes. Goldie whinnied softly, grateful for the shelter. Dusty patted her neck, then began to explore the barn, searching for a dry spot to bed down for the night. Lightning flashed outside, briefly illuminating the interior and revealing the barn's sorry state. Rafters were missing, the floorboards were rotten, and there was a general air of neglect. But still, it offered protection from the storm that was about to unleash its fury. He found a relatively dry corner near a stack of hay and began to prepare a makeshift bed for himself and Goldie, hoping this rickety old barn would hold up against the coming storm. The wind howled, and the rain started to fall in sheets, drumming against the roof with increasing intensity. The storm raged outside, the wind howling like a banshee and the rain lashing against the barn walls. Dusty settled down in his makeshift bed, pulling his blanket around him for warmth. Goldie stood nearby, her presence a comforting weight in the darkness. Just as he was drifting off to sleep, he heard a sound, a soft whimper like a child crying. Dusty sat up, instantly alert. He strained his ears, listening intently. There it was again, a faint sob carried on the wind. He grabbed a lantern from his saddlebags, struck a match, and lit it, casting a flickering glow around the barn. "Hello," he called out, his voice rough from disuse. "Is anyone there?" The only answer was the sound of the storm. He hesitated, then slowly got to his feet, holding the lantern high. He moved cautiously through the barn, his eyes scanning the shadows. And then he saw her. In the far corner, huddled beneath a tattered quilt, was a young woman, her face pale and drawn. Beside her, a small child, no more than 5 years old, was sleeping soundly, oblivious to the storm raging around them. The woman looked up at Dusty, her eyes wide with fear. She clutched the child closer, as if protecting them from a threat. Dusty lowered the lantern slightly, his expression softening. He saw the desperation in her eyes, the exhaustion etched on her face. He realized then that he wasn't the only one seeking shelter in this dilapidated barn. This woman and her child were just as lost and vulnerable as he was. He knew he had to help. I didn't mean to intrude," Dusty said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "The storm. I just needed shelter." The woman, her name was Sarah, according to the soft reply, relaxed her grip on her child slightly. Her eyes, though still filled with apprehension, held a glimmer of hope. We needed shelter too," she said, her voice trembling. "We don't have anywhere else to go." Dusty knelt down, setting the lantern on the ground. The flickering light illuminated Sarah's face, revealing the lines of worry etched around her eyes and the paleness of her skin. He could see that she was young, barely more than a girl herself, but she carried herself with a weary strength that belied her age. The little girl stirred in her sleep, mumbling something unintelligible. Sarah gently stroked her hair, her gaze filled with love. "My name is Dusty," he said, offering a reassuring smile. "And this is Goldie." He gestured towards his horse, who nudged him gently, as if offering her own greeting. "What's your name?" "Sarah," she replied. "And this is Lily." She looked down at her daughter, her expression softening. I'm a widow." The word hung in the air, heavy with sorrow. Dusty understood then the full extent of their plight. A woman alone, with a child to care for, with nowhere to go and no one to turn to. He knew what it was like to lose everything, to feel the crushing weight of despair. And he knew he couldn't just walk away. He looked at Sarah and Lily, their faces illuminated by the flickering lantern light, and made a silent vow to help them in any way he could. The storm raged on, but inside the dilapidated barn, a fragile connection was forming, a flicker of hope in the darkness. The storm continued to rage throughout the night, a constant reminder of the harsh realities they faced. As Lily slept soundly, exhausted from their journey, Sarah began to share her story with Dusty. Her voice was soft, almost hesitant, as she recounted the events that had led her to this point. "My husband, Thomas, he was a good man," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "We had a small farm, nothing fancy, but it was ours. We were happy. But their happiness was short-lived. Thomas had fallen ill with a fever, and despite Sarah's best efforts, he had passed away just a few months ago. His death had left Sarah with nothing but a failing farm and a mountain of debt. The crops had been poor for the past few seasons, and Thomas had been forced to take out a loan to keep the farm afloat. Now, with him gone, Sarah was unable to make the payments. "I tried," she said, her voice breaking. "I worked day and night, trying to keep the farm going, but it was no use. I couldn't do it alone." The bank was threatening to foreclose, and Sarah knew that she would soon be left with nothing. She had packed up what little belongings they had and left, hoping to find a new life, a new beginning, somewhere, anywhere. But so far, all she had found was hardship and despair. Dusty listened patiently, his heart aching for Sarah and her daughter. He knew what it was like to lose everything, to feel the weight of the world on your shoulders. He may have been a broken-down cowboy, but he still had a spark of compassion within him, a desire to help those in need. And he knew, with a certainty that surprised even himself, that he wasn't going to let Sarah and Lily face this storm alone. Dusty woke before dawn, the storm having finally subsided. The first rays of sunlight streamed through the cracks in the barn walls, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. He looked over at Sarah and Lily, still sleeping soundly, their faces peaceful in repose. He knew he had a choice to make. He could continue on his journey, leaving them to fend for themselves, or he could stay and offer his help. He thought about his own situation, the loss of his ranch, the years of hard work that had amounted to nothing. He was a broken man, with nothing to offer. But then he thought about Sarah and Lily, their vulnerability, their desperation. He couldn't just turn his back on them. Something inside him, a long-dormant sense of purpose, began to stir. He rose quietly, gathered some firewood, and started a small fire outside the barn. He brewed some coffee, the aroma filling the air, and began to plan. He didn't have much, but he had his skills, his strength, and his determination. He knew how to build, how to fix things, how to survive. And he knew that Sarah and Lily needed his help. He thought about the farm Sarah had described, the failing crops, the dilapidated buildings. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was willing to try. He was no longer just a broken-down cowboy wandering the plains. He had a purpose now, a reason to stay. He would help Sarah rebuild her life, to create a home for her and Lily. He would use his own broken pieces to help them put their lives back together. He felt a surge of resolve, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. He could do this. He had to. After Sarah and Lily woke up, Dusty explained his plan to fix up the barn. Sarah was hesitant at first, not wanting to impose on him, but Dusty insisted. He told her he needed something to do, that helping them would give him a purpose. With a grateful smile, Sarah agreed. Dusty immediately set to work. He started by patching the holes in the roof, using spare pieces of wood he found scattered around the farm. He reinforced the walls, replacing rotten planks with sturdy ones he salvaged from a collapsed fence. He even managed to repair the barn doors, making them close securely for the first time in years. Sarah watched in amazement as Dusty worked, his hands moving with a skill and efficiency that spoke of years of experience. She had never seen anyone work so hard, so tirelessly. Lily, too, was fascinated by Dusty's efforts, often sitting nearby, watching him with wide-eyed wonder. As the days passed, the barn began to transform. It was still a simple structure, but it was now safe, secure, and dry. The holes in the roof were gone, the walls were strong, and the doors closed tightly, keeping out the wind and rain. It was no longer just a dilapidated barn. It was a haven, a sanctuary. Dusty's efforts provided Sarah and Lily with a sense of comfort and security they hadn't felt in a long time. They had a safe place to sleep, a dry place to store their belongings, and a place to call home, at least for now. Dusty had not only repaired the barn, he had also repaired a small part of their broken hearts. His kindness and generosity had given them hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. As Dusty continued to work on the barn, he knew that they would eventually need more supplies. The farm was isolated, and they couldn't survive on what little Sarah had brought with her. He decided to ride into town, hoping to find some work and earn enough money to buy food and other necessities. The town of Harmony Creek was small, with a single main street lined with dusty shops and saloons. As Dusty rode in on Goldie, he immediately felt the eyes of the townsfolk upon him. He was a stranger, and strangers were not always welcome in these parts. He could feel their suspicion, their unspoken questions. Who was this weathered cowboy, and what was he doing here? He stopped at the general store, hoping to buy some supplies on credit, but the storekeeper, a gruff man with a suspicious glare, refused. "Don't know you from Adam," he said, his voice cold. "Can't give credit to strangers." Dusty understood. He didn't blame the storekeeper for being cautious. He was a stranger, after all, with no reputation to speak of. He tried the saloon next, hoping to find some work, but the saloon owner, a burly man with a handlebar mustache, sized him up with a skeptical eye. "Don't need any help," he said, his voice dismissive. "Besides, you don't look like you're good for much." Dusty realized that he would have to earn their trust to prove that he was not a threat. He would have to show them that he was a hard worker, an honest man. But it wouldn't be easy. The townsfolk of Harmony Creek were wary of outsiders, especially those with a mysterious past. And Dusty, with his weathered face, his patched clothes, and his silent demeanor, certainly fit that description. He had a long road ahead of him if he wanted to gain their acceptance. Dusty wasn't one to give up easily. He knew he had to find a way to earn some money. He started by offering his services around town, taking on any odd job he could find. He helped Mrs. Gable with her gardening, repaired a broken fence for Old Man Johnson, and even cleaned out the stables for the livery owner. The work was hard, and the pay was meager, but Dusty didn't complain. He was grateful for any opportunity to earn a few coins. He faced constant prejudice and underestimation from the townsfolk, who saw him as nothing more than a washed-up cowboy. They sneered at his worn clothes, scoffed at his quiet demeanor, and doubted his ability to do anything worthwhile. He'll never last a week, he heard one man say. Too old, too tired. But Dusty ignored their taunts. He kept his head down, worked hard, and let his actions speak for themselves. He showed them that he was a skilled carpenter, a strong laborer, and a man of his word. Slowly, grudgingly, some of the townsfolk began to change their minds about him. They saw that he was not just a drifter, but a man with a strong work ethic and a willingness to help. He saved every penny he earned, carefully counting his coins each night. He knew that Sarah and Lily were depending on him, and he wouldn't let them down. He dreamed of buying them new clothes, of filling their bellies with good food, and of building them a real home, a place where they could feel safe and secure. He knew it would be a long and difficult journey, but he was determined to succeed. He would prove to the townsfolk and to himself that he was more than just a broken-down cowboy. He was a man with a purpose, a man with a heart. The image of Sarah and Lily sleeping in the barn, huddled together for warmth, haunted Dusty's dreams. He knew that the barn was only a temporary solution. They needed a real home, a place where they could feel safe, secure, and loved. He began to envision a small, cozy house with sturdy walls, a warm fireplace, and a bright, sunny window where Lily could play. He spent hours sketching out plans in the dirt with a stick, imagining every detail of the house. He wanted it to be perfect, a symbol of hope and a fresh start for Sarah and Lily. He dreamed of a day he could hand Sarah the key and watch her face light up with joy. The thought of building a house fueled his determination. It gave him the strength to endure the long hours of hard labor, the prejudice of the townsfolk, and the loneliness he often felt. He knew it would be a monumental task, but he was willing to do whatever it took to make his dream a reality. He started to gather materials, salvaging wood from abandoned buildings, collecting stones from the nearby riverbed. He worked tirelessly, his hands calloused and sore, his body aching with fatigue. But every time he felt like giving up, he would think of Sarah and Lily, and the image of their new home would give him the strength to continue. He knew that building a house would be more than just constructing a building. It would be building a foundation for a new life, a symbol of their resilience, and a testament to the power of hope. It would be a place where they could create new memories, build a future, and finally find peace. And Dusty was determined to make that dream come true. He was going to build him a home. Dusty's days were long and arduous. He would wake before sunrise, work his odd jobs in town until dusk, and then return to the farm to continue gathering materials for the house. He spent hours salvaging wood from abandoned shacks and dilapidated fences, carefully selecting each piece and hauling it back to the farm on Goldie's back. He also spent countless hours collecting stones from the riverbed, carefully choosing the sturdiest and most suitable ones for the foundation. He would stack them neatly, one by one, his muscles aching with exhaustion, but his spirit undeterred. He worked tirelessly in his spare time, driven by his dream of building a home for Sarah and Lily. He knew that every piece of wood, every stone he collected, was a step closer to making that dream a reality. He often worked late into the night, under the light of the moon, his hammer ringing out in the stillness of the prairie. Sarah watched him with admiration and gratitude, amazed by his unwavering dedication. She knew that he was sacrificing everything for them, and she felt a deep sense of obligation to help him in any way she could. She started to assist him with smaller tasks, helping him sort the wood, clean the stones, and carry the lighter materials. Even little Lily would try to help, bringing dusty, small pebbles she found in the yard, her face beaming with pride. Dusty would always accept her offerings with a warm smile, telling her that she was a valuable member of the team. Their collective efforts created a bond between them, a shared sense of purpose that strengthened their resolve. The dream of the house was slowly becoming a reality, brick by brick, stone by stone, fueled by their unwavering determination and their growing affection for one another. Sarah had been in a state of despair since her husband's death, weighed down by grief and the overwhelming responsibility of caring for Lily alone. But witnessing Dusty's unwavering dedication to building them a home, she began to feel a flicker of hope rekindle within her. She saw his sacrifices, his tireless efforts, and his genuine desire to help them, and it stirred something deep inside her. She started to regain her strength, both physically and emotionally. She realized that she couldn't just stand by and watch Dusty carry the entire burden. She wanted to contribute, to show him that she appreciated his efforts, and to prove to herself that she was still capable of taking care of her daughter. She began by helping Dusty with smaller tasks, sorting the wood, cleaning the stones, and carrying the lighter materials. She also took on more responsibilities around the farm, tending to the small vegetable garden that Thomas had planted and caring for the few chickens that remained. As she worked alongside Dusty, she found herself smiling more often, laughing with Lily, and feeling a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in months. The weight of grief and despair began to lift, replaced by a glimmer of optimism and a renewed belief in the future. She also noticed a growing affection for Dusty, a deep appreciation for his kindness, his strength, and his unwavering support. He had come into their lives when they needed him the most, and he had given them a reason to hope again. She knew that she would never be able to repay him for everything he had done, but she was determined to show him that she valued him, not just as a helper, but as a friend, and perhaps something more. The house was not just being built with wood and stone. It was being built with hope, with love, and with a shared determination to create a better future. The townsfolk of Harmony Creek had been watching Dusty from afar, initially skeptical and suspicious of his presence. But as they witnessed his selfless actions and Sarah's renewed spirit, their opinions began to slowly change. They saw him working tirelessly, day after day, without complaint, driven by a genuine desire to help Sarah and Lily. They also saw the positive impact he was having on Sarah. She was no longer the grief-stricken widow, weighed down by sorrow. She was smiling again, laughing, and taking pride in her work. They saw her tending to the farm, caring for the chickens, and helping Dusty with the house, her eyes sparkling with renewed hope. The townsfolk started to realize that Dusty wasn't just a drifter, a washed-up cowboy. He was a man with a heart, a man with a purpose, and a man who was willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of others. They saw that he was a good influence on Sarah and Lily, providing them with stability, support, and a reason to believe in the future. Slowly, the prejudice and suspicion began to fade, replaced by curiosity and respect. Some of the townsfolk started to offer Dusty small gestures of kindness, a friendly nod, a helping hand, or a word of encouragement. The storekeeper, who had initially refused him credit, now offered him a discount on supplies. The saloon owner, who had scoffed at his ability to work, now offered him a free meal. The change in attitude was gradual but noticeable. Dusty was no longer an outsider, an unwelcome stranger. He was becoming a part of the community, a valued member of Harmony Creek. He had earned their trust, not with words, but with actions. And as the foundation of the house began to take shape, so too did the foundation of a new life for Dusty, Sarah, and Lily, a life built on hope, on love, and on the unwavering support of a community that had finally opened its heart. Just when things seemed to be looking up, a new threat emerged. A wealthy landowner named Mr. Harding, who owned much of the surrounding land, had always had his eye on Sarah's farm. He saw it as a valuable piece of property, and he had been waiting for an opportunity to acquire it. He arrived at the farm one afternoon, his face grim, his eyes cold. He informed Sarah that he held the mortgage on her land, a fact she had been desperately trying to ignore. He claimed that she was behind on her payments and that he was now foreclosing. He demanded that she and Lily vacate the property within a week. Sarah was devastated. All her hard work, all her hope, seemed to crumble before her. She had been so focused on building a new life that she had forgotten about the looming debt that threatened to destroy everything. She pleaded with Mr. Harding, explaining her situation, but he was unmoved. He was a ruthless man, driven by greed and a desire for power. Dusty, who had been working nearby, overheard the conversation and stepped forward, his eyes blazing with anger. He confronted Mr. Harding, defending Sarah and her right to the land. He argued that she was a hardworking woman who deserved a chance to rebuild her life. But Mr. Harding was unmoved. He scoffed at Dusty, dismissing him as a worthless drifter who had no right to interfere. He made it clear that he was determined to get his way, regardless of the consequences. He threatened to use his influence to make life difficult for Sarah and Dusty if they refused to comply. The dream of the house, the hope for a new life, seemed to be slipping away, threatened by the greed and power of a wealthy landowner. Dusty, despite his weathered appearance and broken past, stood tall before Mr. Harding. He wasn't the same timid drifter who had wandered into Harmony Creek just weeks ago. He had found a purpose, a reason to fight, and he wasn't about to back down. "You can't do this, Harding," Dusty said, his voice firm and unwavering. "This land is Sarah's livelihood, her home. You can't just take it away from her." Mr. Harding scoffed. "And what are you going to do about it, old man? You're nothing but a burden to her, a leech sucking her dry." Dusty's eyes narrowed. "I may not have much, but I have my pride, and I won't stand by and watch you bully a defenseless woman and her child." He stepped closer to Mr. Harding, his gaze unwavering. "This land belongs to Sarah, and I'm going to make sure she keeps it." Mr. Harding, taken aback by Dusty's unexpected courage, took a step back. He had underestimated this broken-down cowboy. He realized that Dusty was not someone to be trifled with. "You're making a mistake, old man," Mr. Harding sneered. "You're going up against someone with more power and influence than you can imagine. You'll regret this." Dusty simply shook his head. "I'm not afraid of you, Harding. I've faced worse than you in my life, and I won't let you win." He stood his ground, his gaze locked on Mr. Harding's, his presence radiating a quiet strength that surprised even himself. He might have been a broken-down cowboy, but he was also a man of honor, a man who was willing to fight for what he believed in. And he believed in Sarah, in Lily, and in their right to a future on that land. He was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, determined to protect them from the greed and power of Mr. Harding. The battle had begun. Dusty's courageous stand against Mr. Harding ignited a spark in the hearts of the townsfolk of Harmony Creek. They had witnessed his unwavering dedication, his selflessness, and his genuine desire to help Sarah and Lily. They realized that he was not just fighting for them, but for the values that they all held dear: fairness, compassion, and community spirit. They could no longer stand idly by and watch Mr. Harding bully a defenseless woman and her child. They decided to take action, to rally around Dusty and Sarah, and to show Mr. Harding that they would not tolerate his greed and oppression. The storekeeper, who had once refused Dusty credit, organized a town meeting, inviting everyone to come and discuss how they could help Sarah keep her land. The saloon owner, who had scoffed at Dusty's ability to work, offered to donate a portion of his profits to Sarah's cause. Mrs. Gable, whom Dusty had helped with her gardening, baked dozens of pies to sell and raise money. The townsfolk pooled their resources, offering money, supplies, and their time. They organized work parties to help Dusty gather materials for the house, and they volunteered their skills to assist with the construction. They saw the house as more than just a building. It was a symbol of their unity, their compassion, and their defiance against Mr. Harding's tyranny. The community had come together, united by a common cause. They were determined to help Sarah keep her land and build her dream home, not just for her sake, but for the sake of their community and for the sake of justice. The power of community was about to be unleashed. The day they raised the frame of the house was a day of celebration in Harmony Creek. It was a scene reminiscent of the old-fashioned barn raisings, where the entire community would come together to help a neighbor in need. Men, women, and children from all walks of life gathered at Sarah's farm, their faces beaming with excitement and anticipation. Dusty, with the help of the town's carpenter, had pre-cut and assembled the frame of the house. Now it was time to raise it, to bring their dream to life. With ropes and pulleys, and with the combined strength of the entire community, they slowly lifted the heavy frame into place. The air was filled with shouts of encouragement, the rhythmic creaking of ropes, and the sound of hammers pounding nails. Sarah watched in tears, her heart overflowing with gratitude. Lily clapped her hands with glee, her eyes wide with wonder. As the final beam was secured, A cheer erupted from the crowd. The frame of the house stood tall and proud, a testament to their unity and kindness. It was more than just a structure. It was a symbol of their shared hope, their unwavering support, and their determination to overcome adversity. The women of the town had prepared a feast, spreading out a lavish spread of food on long tables. Everyone gathered together, sharing stories, laughter, and good cheer. Even Mr. Johnson, who had always been a grumpy old man, cracked a smile and offered a kind word to Sarah. The barn raising was a turning point for Harmony Creek. It brought the community closer together, forging bonds that would last a lifetime. It showed them the power of unity and the importance of helping those in need. And it gave them a renewed sense of hope, a belief that anything was possible when they worked together. The frame of the house was raised, but so too was the spirit of the community. Mr. Harding had been watching the events unfold with growing unease. He had underestimated the power of community, the unwavering support that the townsfolk had shown for Sarah and Dusty. He realized that he was no longer dealing with a defenseless widow and a washed-up cowboy, but with an entire community that was determined to fight for what they believed in. He knew that he couldn't win. He couldn't go up against the collective will of Harmony Creek. He also realized that his reputation was at stake. If he continued to pursue the foreclosure, he would be seen as a ruthless and greedy man, ostracized by the community. He swallowed his pride and decided to back down. He rode out to Sarah's farm, his face grim, but his tone conciliatory. He offered Sarah a fair deal on the mortgage, reducing the interest rate and extending the payment schedule. He even offered to help her with the farm, providing her with access to his resources and expertise. Sarah was stunned. She couldn't believe that Mr. Harding had changed his mind. She had expected him to be relentless, to pursue the foreclosure to the bitter end. But the power of community had prevailed. She accepted Mr. Harding's offer, grateful for the opportunity to keep her land and rebuild her life. She knew that it wouldn't be easy, but she was no longer alone. She had the support of Dusty, the love of Lily, and the unwavering backing of the entire community of Harmony Creek. The threat of losing the farm had been lifted, replaced by a sense of hope and gratitude. The house could now be completed, a symbol of their resilience and a testament to the power of community spirit. With the threat of foreclosure lifted and the community support behind them, Dusty and Sarah worked side by side to complete the house. They spent their days hammering, sawing, and painting, their movements synchronized, their hearts filled with joy. Dusty taught Sarah how to use the tools, sharing his knowledge and experience. Sarah, in turn, taught Dusty about the farm, about the land, and about the importance of nurturing and caring for the things you love. They learned from each other, they supported each other, and they grew closer with each passing day. Lily, too, played her part, helping with smaller tasks, bringing them water, and keeping their spirits high with her infectious laughter. The house was not just being built with wood and stone. It was being built with love, with trust, and with a shared vision for the future. As the house neared completion, Dusty and Sarah found themselves spending more and more time together, sharing stories, dreams, and quiet moments of reflection. They realized that their bond had grown into something more than just friendship. They had fallen in love. The house became a symbol of their shared resilience, their unwavering commitment, and their growing affection for one another. It was a place where they could build a new life together, a place where they could raise Lily, and a place where they could finally find happiness. The walls echoed with laughter, the air was filled with love, and the foundation was built on a solid bedrock of trust and respect. The house was complete, and so too was their hearts. They were ready to begin their new life together. As the final touches were put on the house, Dusty knew that he had a decision to make. He could continue on his journey, wandering the plains, searching for a place to belong. Or he could stay, build a life with Sarah and Lily, and finally find a place to call home. He looked at Sarah, her eyes sparkling with love, her face radiant with happiness. He looked at Lily, her laughter filling the air, her heart overflowing with joy. He realized that he had already found what he had been searching for. He had found a family, a purpose, and a place where he belonged. He sat down with Sarah one evening, as the sun set over the prairie, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. He told her about his past, about the loss of his ranch, about the years of wandering and loneliness. He told her about how she and Lily had changed his life, giving him a reason to hope again, a reason to believe in the future. He took her hand, his eyes filled with sincerity. "Sarah," he said, "I know I'm not much, but I love you. I love Lily, and I want to stay here with you and build a life together. I want to be a husband to you, a father to Lily, and a part of this community." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, her heart overflowing with emotion. She squeezed his hand tightly, her voice trembling with happiness. "Dusty," she said, "I love you too, and I want you to stay. We want you to stay. You're not just a helper, you're a part of our family." Dusty smiled, his heart soaring with joy. He had found his place, his purpose, and his home. He was no longer a broken-down cowboy wandering the plains. He was a man with a family, a man with a future, and a man who had finally found happiness. He would stay and build a life with Sarah and Lily, creating a home filled with love, laughter, and unwavering support. His journey was over. His new life had begun. Years passed. The small house on Sarah's farm became a haven, a place of warmth, laughter, and unwavering love. Dusty and Sarah were married, their union celebrated by the entire community of Harmony Creek. Lily blossomed into a bright and cheerful young woman, cherished by her parents and surrounded by friends. The farm prospered, thanks to Sarah's hard work and Dusty's ingenuity. They raised cattle, grew crops, and sold their produce at the town market, earning a comfortable living and contributing to the community. The house stood as a testament to their resilience, their unwavering commitment, and the power of second chances. The final scene shows Dusty, Sarah, and Lily sitting on the porch of their home, watching the sunset over the prairie. Dusty is no longer the broken-down cowboy who wandered into Harmony Creek. He is a man with a family, a man with a purpose, and a man who has finally found peace. Sarah is no longer the grief-stricken widow weighed down by sorrow. She is a loving wife, a devoted mother, and a respected member of the community. Lily is a happy and well-adjusted young woman, full of hope and promise. They are surrounded by their friends and neighbors, the townsfolk of Harmony Creek, who have become their extended family. They are all smiling, laughing, and sharing stories, their hearts filled with gratitude and joy. The scene highlights the power of kindness, the importance of community, and the transformative effect of second chances. It is a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope can always be found, and that even the most broken of souls can be healed by love and compassion. The sun sets, casting a warm glow over the house, the farm, and the community, a perfect ending to a story of resilience, redemption, and the enduring power of the human spirit.